Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So today we're going to talk about the last comp that I wanted to do for Yelan, which is the VapeEC HyperCarry comp. In fact, this is a comp that I'm really looking forward to now after having done the math and seeing how good it is. And I'll show you guys why I say this. Before that, let me just do a quick introduction of what we're going to cover today. So obviously the comp itself, I'll show the notes and important notes and assumptions. We'll talk about the rotation, detail C0, C1, C6 rotations, energy in the rotation and EI requirements, Aqua versus Sacrificial Bow at C0 Yelan in this comp, obviously Yelan's damage and DPS in this comp, and as well as with the C2 Kazuha effect. And we do a quick artifact comparison, we do a DPS comparison between VapeEC HyperCarry and Taser. Now, if you remember, I can't remember exactly which math guide is. But the math guide for Taser, if I didn't remember wrongly, is math guide 5. So math guide 5 itself, you'll see that Taser already does better than Vape, at least for Yelan's damage. So in here, we'll compare that Taser versus VapeEC HyperCarry, as well as with the C2 Kazuha effect. We'll do a TLDR, and then we'll talk about what's coming next. So without further ado, let's talk about the comp itself. We have Kazuha, Yelan, Raiden, Bennett. Oh wait, I forgot one thing here. And healing. So I don't think I need to talk much more about Kazuha. Likewise for Yelan, likewise for Raiden, right? And Bennett is the one that's being introduced here that replaces Shinobu. So Bennett also offers healing, but on top of that, he allows us to do a Pyro-infused Kazuha Q with his E, which in turn is how we get our Pyro Aura for doing the forward Vapes, and a Q for buffing Raiden. So Raiden's damage is going to increase in this HyperCarry comp, in this VapeEC HyperCarry comp, which is really good. And I'll say why it's good. It's better than it was in Taser comp, it's better for Raiden as well than in Ayato over Vape HyperCarry. And in fact, right now, this is what we're going to say here. So unlike Ayato over Vape HyperCarry, where we have to give most of the buffs to Ayato instead of Raiden, we can actually turn the disadvantage of Yelan not utilizing attack buffs into an advantage in this comp, where Raiden gets the full Bennett buff. Because I don't need to give the Bennett buff or the Bennett Q effect to Yelan. She can't benefit from it. So I might as well save it for Raiden. So, which means rather than overweight, right, we are actually splitting the elements. It's a rainbow comp, obviously. We are going to be splitting the elements between forward Vapes on Yelan and EC on Raiden. But it's not just about EC, it's the fact that she's getting a lot of buffs. Okay? So essentially, in here, Yelan actually gets the same buffs as per Taser comp. Because I have Kazuha, right? I have Raiden. But we get higher HP bonus because this is a rainbow comp. An additional 12% HP bonus from her A1 passive. She gets to do forward Vape on some of her damage. And Raiden gets both Kazuha and Bennett buff. So I'll say that this is truly a dual DPS team. The dual main DPS team. Not really main DPS because technically speaking, Yelan not really a main DPS. The amount on field time that she takes, I wouldn't say that she's a main DPS. Even with C6. But it's an interesting concept where you have two dual DPS team. And most importantly, it's a dual DPS team with different elements. Which means there is no mobs that are immune to your damage. There is no mobs where your comp will have a disadvantage. But what this also means is that I can't really recommend any flat slots here for this comp, other than the budget version of Kazuha, which is Sucrose. But Sucrose is nowhere near what Kazuha provides, that's for sure. Especially if you have Freedom Zone. Okay, now, so this is for the comp itself. Let's take a quick look on the important notes and assumptions. I'm not going to go through all of this. This is pretty much the same as per all of my math guides, but the only difference is that I've actually removed an assumption here where I say that the how should I put it? The E duration. Because for the purpose of the forward Vape, we actually have to tweak and adjust our E duration in some cases. So I've removed that assumption. I'll talk more about it in the rotation, which is coming up next. So first off, C0 rotation. This is the rotation itself. D represents dodge or dash. And I'll talk more about why it's structured in such a way, but I'm not going to run through the whole rotation itself. Please pause the video if you really need to take a deep look at it, or just listen to what I'm saying while you look at it. The biggest challenge for Yelan forward vapes is ensuring enough pyro on enemies, because forward vapes obviously consume a lot of pyro aura. It's about 2.5. If I didn't remember only. Yeah, 2.5. So since Yelan Q initial skill damage applies to you Hydro and does the least of her damage, we are looking to use her E first to vaporize it. You notice here, I'm using the E before the Q. Okay? Because we don't want to vapor, the problem with if you hit with her Q first, you're not going to be able to do forward vapes after this, because her Q applies 2 units of Hydro. It's just not possible. In fact, you will end up giving Kazuha the reverse vapes on his Q. Now, the vape on the CA here really needs to be tested, but likely you need to, like I said, right, you need to cast Yelan Q out of Kazuha Q range, which means that we will need to assume 1 second of dodge after Yelan E to avoid the Yelan Q initial hit from hitting any enemy, or at least just one. If you have a whole bunch of enemies, hitting a few of them is not so bad, but just make sure that we don't hit. The best case scenario is don't hit any of them, so that it doesn't apply too much Hydro. And it's also because her Q, the first skill modifier, is very, very low. The amount of percentage HP that it uses is very low. It's like 12% at level 9 and 14% at level 12. So it's easily 1/3 of her E. So that's why we need to vaporize her E and not her Q. ICD on different attack types are usually not shared, so we don't really have to worry about the E and Q. But if they are shared, if they are shared, if they are shared, then we can afford to let the Q hit. But it's unlikely. So it would be great, but I'm very, very doubtful that we can afford to let the Q hit and still be able to do a bit on the CA. It's very, very unlikely. The only scenario is if the Q shares the ICD with E, but highly unlikely. Okay? Now, if you notice that Raiden E is cast very late, which is a bit different from the usual type of Raiden rotations, right? I know it feels like a waste for Raiden's E to be cast so late, but the reasons for doing so are: A, if you cast it early, it will consume the Pyro application from Kazuha Pyro Q. Just imagine your Kazuha Pyro doing a tick of damage, which procs the Raiden E effect. It will immediately consume your 1 unit of Pyro, because Overload consumes 1.25. So Pyro application will be immediately gone. So you can't afford it. You have to let the Kazuha Q tick, apply the 1U Pyro, and then you do the Yelan damage to Vape. Now, do you see why we say don't hit with the Q? Do you understand why we are going through that trouble of doing this setup? It's so that we are able to vape the hits that matter on Yelan. And don't worry about it, because I'll show you guys the actual impact of the DPS. For C0 at least, you are still able to kill the rotation in 90 seconds. It's fine. Another reason why we are casting Raiden's E so late is so that we can ensure the Electro Swerve for Kazuha buffs for Raiden Q full duration. You notice here, Raiden E, immediately we do A, Kazuha E. And because we are doing Hydro here, Hydro and Electro will stay together on the enemy when you have Electro Charge, as well as enough time left on the Elemental Aura. You do a quick Kazuha E here, you will be able to get your Electro Swerve, and Raiden Q can continue. Okay? So this is good stuff. Now, although it can't buff all of Yelan's Q procs, it will still buff the 7 seconds on Raiden. Okay, because Raiden E here, we, like for example this M1 here, we don't get to buff it. Q doesn't hit in the first place, so it doesn't matter. So it's really only just one M1 proc, at least in C0. So you still get the full Raiden E buff for all of the Raiden Q and normal attacks during her burst mode. So still okay, still pretty okay. And thankfully, Yelan's Q does not snapshot. This is why this whole thing can work. It's because her Q does not snapshot. If a Q snapshot, you're not even going to be able to do forward vapes, like what I've mentioned here. And the rest of it is pretty much the same as all the math guides so far. Like, for example, the first Yelan CA is assumed to be BB. You just need to make sure that for the first rotation, you do have the BB ready. That's it. And this BB is here so that we are able to do a hydro swirl. Okay. Next up, C1 rotation. The main difference here is that after the Q, where we aim not to hit, we aim to vaporize our E. So instead of vaporizing a charge attack, we vaporize our E, which is much better because the E has a much better talent modifier or HP modifier, HP schooling, than the charge attack. So I would say that the C1 vaping is the most ideal here, where we vape both E's. Okay, the target when you're the best attack to vape is her E when you are trying to do 4 vapes. And we still do one more N1. Like in C0, you see that we do an N1, right? Because we want to make sure that we have hydro application. For hydro swirl during the Raiden Q as well, so that Yelan's Q procs still have the hydro swirl for the Kazuha buff effect. And also because of the way that electro charge works, we are not worried that we will not be able to do electro swirl too. Now C1 has an additional 2 seconds instead of the usual 1.5 seconds, because if you have been following my math guides, C0 is 19 seconds, C1 is usually 20.5. This is the first com out of the 4 different comps that we have 2 seconds instead of 1.5 seconds, because Yelan second E is assumed to be either 2 seconds or 1 second plus 1 second of dodge. Okay? Because it really depends on C2 Kazuha effect. I need to test it out to see how Yelan damage is being dealt. But if you don't have C2 Kazuha, then obviously it doesn't matter whether you're doing a 1 second dodge or you're doing a 2 second E to move away such that your Yelan Q does not hit enemies. Simple as that. And in this case, it's a bit different because it's the second E here, this E here, where we're trying to go back into the Kazuha Q range. But like I said, no difference, right? Depending on whether C2 Kazuha needs you to be in the aura, in his Q, when you start casting or when you end your cast and when you actually trigger your hydro damage for Yelan E. So yeah, don't need to worry too much about this. Basically, the first E is to move away, the second E is to go back. As simple as that. Okay, let's talk about C6 rotation. Now I know not all the folks will be interested in this, but I did do quite a bit of analysis on this, so hear me out, even if you're not too interested. Or rather, even if you're not going to get C6, just hear me out if you can. Otherwise, feel free to skip. Now, even though 6x NA from the C6 effect can result in 2 vapes in terms of the 2.5 second ICD or 3 hits, I am only assuming 1 forward vape on the 6x normal attack because the Q procs and C2 effect should result in a reverse vape and hydro swirl on Kazuha's Q instead after when we reach the 4th NA, for example. That's what I'm expecting. Because Q procs and C2 are not the same as the NA, right? They should not share the same ICD, which means that this can continue to apply hydro on your first NA, second NA, and third NA, which will result in Kazuha doing a reverse vape from his Pyro Q ticks, which will help, but at the same time it helps because your Kazuha Q, the animal portion of it, will help you to do hydro swirl and extend your Kazuha buffs. Right? It extends the Kazuha buffs as well, which is a good thing. So this is the reason why, right after the 6S NA, you notice that I'm doing a Bennett E and a Bennett Q, instead of doing the usual Yelan E plus the CA, etc. Because we need him to clear the hydro aura from the Q procs and the C2 effect. Okay, simple as that. I need him to help to clear away the hydro aura by applying his pyro. I'm not saying that he 100% can do it. Okay, actual testing needs to be done for this. But this is the best case scenario I can think of, to allow our second E here to do a forward vape. E is really the best option to do forward vape. The NA with C6 effect is not too bad. It's It's much better than the normal charge attack, but you still, and Yelan E is still the best option for Vape, even with the comparing against the C6 effect. Because C6 effect is 6 different strikes, not one big strike. But like I said, it needs to be tested whether it's enough to clear, or maybe whether even just Q is enough to clear, etc. Just FYI, Bennett does provide 2U from his E and Q. Okay. So I hope this is quite deep and advanced into the whole aura, elemental aura, and the gauge unit theory, etc. But I hope you guys understand that I really have taken all this into consideration. So we really have to see whether or not it's enough. Okay? It should be, because when you do 6S NA, right? During this 6S NA is about 2.5 seconds. So you get about 3 Q procs and 1 C2 effect. So that's about 4U. While you're doing this, you have a Kazuha Q that triggers, that reduces the 4U. You have a Bennett E and Q that helps reduce the U further. But like I said, it needs to be tested, yeah? Okay. So starting from C4 Yelan E should be used early to get 40% HP effect. This is the same as what I have mentioned previously. And one thing that's slightly different here is that even with the 6S NA as well as the Bennett Q being brought forward, we will still have Yelan Q and Bennett Q for the full duration of Raiden Q, which is fantastic. But it's also mainly because Raiden Q duration is much shorter than, say, Hu Tao or Yoimiya. It's 7 seconds. So her 7 seconds is actually becoming an advantage here, as opposed to 9 seconds on Hu Tao and 10 seconds on Yoimiya. Yep, alright, so now this is the detailed explanation in terms of all the forward Vapes for the different rotations C0, C1, and C6, or C0 is Sacrificial for the C1. Now let's look at the energy required between the C0 and C1. So I guess it's pretty straightforward, right? Just like the Taser comp, the ER requirement is lowered. Kazuha doesn't need any bonus ER, Yelan only needs 140 to 150. I'll talk more about that later. But see, this is what I'm trying to say here. It's actually slightly higher than Taser due to the fact that you lose your electro resonance. So you lose some energy, and you also get slightly lesser energy from Bennett compared to Shinobu. Oh wait, there actually is one more Bennett E. Oh no, sorry. The second Bennett E is only applicable for C6 rotation. Yeah, sorry about that. It's only applicable for C6 rotation, so one Bennett E here is still correct. So 140 ER requires 10.3 energy, as you can see here. Assuming you don't have C0, C1 Kazuha as well. So I mean, it's pretty feasible, but you can go 150 ER if you want to play safe. Obviously, my math will go with 150 ER, right? But reminder that my Raiden has 319.9 ER because of engulfing. Without engulfing, you should target 250 ER on Raiden, which means the energy you gain from Raiden's Q is lower. It's about 23.8 instead of 28.9. And everyone's ER target should increase by approximately 20% in this comp. Except Bennett, because he's already in SS. And by basically it's only Kazuha and Yelan to increase by 20. In fact, Kazuha can even risk not getting the 20 because he is already at high energy amount here. Let's look at the C1 rotation next, or C0 Sacrificial Bow. Now you see it's very comfortable now. We even have 100 ER on Yelan. So just like Taser comp, with C1 Yelan can go with 100 ER, which is pretty awesome. I really like this. One Raiden basically eliminates the need for any ER on your 3 teammates other than someone like Bennett, who in the first place, you would have built high ER on him to make him flexible across all comps, right? So 100 ER also implies that you do not need ER base roll on your artifacts starting from C1 Yelan onwards in the Taser comp as well as in this VapeEC HyperCarry comp. And this means that you can go for either flat HP, EM, or just flats. Flats meaning that it doesn't matter which row it is, so that your artifact upgrading and farming experience is more lenient per se. For simplicity of my math, I will leave it as flex. But I can tell you EM is likely going to be better since we are doing forward vapes for Yelan in this comp. I'll talk more about it later when we talk about C2 Kazuha, the EM effect. 200 EM for that. And just like Taser, for C0 with Sacrificial is a bit contradictory since Sacrificial gives you 30.6 ER that you don't really need, so it's slightly better to build 140 to 150 ER on a C0 Yelan and use a different weapon rather than Sacrificial. So one last note about the C1 energy. Since C1 Yelan can afford 100 ER with Raiden, obviously 4 Emblem is not going to be the best artifact for her. Let's look at the artifact comparison later. With the energy being so high in the C1 rotation, you only need to increase ER by 20 on Yelan if your Raiden is at 250. You don't need to increase Kazuha or anyone else, just increase Yelan by 20. Technically speaking, even the Kazuha doesn't need an increase of 20% ER, even in C0 rotation. Right, now let's look at a quick comparison between Aqua and Sacrificial both for a C0 Yelan in this comp, the VapeEC HyperCarry. So these are the damage figures, these are the DPS figures. This is a 21 second by the way. I mean the damage figure is already lower, but this is a 21 second rotation, this is a 19 second rotation, which is why you see such a big difference here. Damage of the C0R1 Aqua is actually better than C0R5 Sacrificial Bow by a whopping 39 to 40% at 4 Emblem. Since 4 Emblem is slightly better at C0 because we have higher ER, right? This is not the scenario where we have C1 and we only need 100 ER. This is still the C0 Yelan in this comp. But nevertheless, 39 to 40% is a huge difference and is exactly what a signature weapon should perform against a 4-star weapon. In fact, it's more than that, but yeah, I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. As I have said before, Sacrificial Bow recommendation for C0 Yelan only applies to VV and Vape. Basically comps where she needs very high ER. For 2 HOD2 TOTM, R1 Aqua outperforms R5 Sacrificial by about 30%. So it's still higher than a typical tier difference between 4-star and 5-star weapon. So nice. But to be fair, like what I've mentioned in the Taser comp, the best C0 4-star weapon is no longer Sacrificial in VapeEC or Taser. I just want to repeat the same comparison so that you guys can see how it works out. Yeah. Basically, it's very simple. When you need very high ER on your C0 Yelan, then the Sacrificial Bow will perform better. Otherwise, Aqua will perform better. It's very, very simple. Very straightforward stuff. Very similar to C6 Xingqiu as well. Alright, now let's go on to talk about the Yelan damage and DPS in this comp. You guys are going to see some crazy figures. I actually went back to double check my math. Because the jump from C5 to C6 is crazy. But it's also because of a few factors. There's more procs, more Q procs, more normal attack damage, as well as more of the C2 effect proc as well. That's the reason why. The way her C6 is designed is really good, if I were to say. So this is the DPS figure. Freaking 74k at C6R5 for a mostly sub-DPS character. She still spends more, her DPS is still more, there's more of it off-field than on-field. And you gotta remember that based on my rotation, right, we purposely avoid not hitting with our Q. We also drop one of the CA if you notice for C1 plus rotation onwards. The CA that you get, the BBCA that you get right after her E, because we have 2 E's, right, but we only do 1 CA. And all of it is because we want to ensure forward weight on her E's. Her damage, even with dropping this and getting forward vapes in return, the damage increases by quite a fair bit. That's 1.57 to 1.81 million at C6. Yeah, that's... what the freak, man. Even at C0, it's 495k to 572k, which is still very impressive for a C0 figure, by the way. Now, I don't like to overhype, but these figures are honestly crazy. Okay, I mean it's lower than a C2 Ito because of how much Ito reduces C2 Ito reduces your rotation. Ito is on field. She's mostly off you. Oh my god. Oh, remember we still need to test, or I still need to test if the forward Vapes are listed in rotations do happen. The first E I'm very confident. The second E maybe. The second CA on C0 maybe. The one that I'm least confident about is really the normal attacks. The 6x normal attack for C6. But at the same time, if you look at in terms of the amount of elemental unit there, etc., I think it's still possible. What I mentioned may still work. But like I said, I want to test it before I do any confirmation. So please wait for my testing before you spend on Yelan and then you blame me saying that oh the actual testing result is different from what you say in your math guide. Well, this is a pre-release math guide, guys or ladies. Okay. So like I said, I did take into consideration the elemental gauge application, the consumption, etc. Which is why, you know, I'm doing things like not hitting with the Q, I'm dropping 1 C at C1+, we are doing the Raiden E late, we are even doing the ballot E and Q earlier for C6, etc. I'm gonna do something that the Ayato mains will hate me for, but I'm just gonna do it because I am a objective comparison. I'm someone who does objective comparison. Okay, so comparing her DPS figures, especially with the extended rotation, yeah, 24.5 seconds instead of 23 seconds from the usual. She's doing 75% more than a C6 Ayato in overweight hypercarry at R1 and 64% at R5 with 2 HOD, 2 TLDR. It's a lot more. And remember the proportion of single versus the AoE for Yelan. When she's doing so much more than in Ayato, it's gonna take you 5 to 6 enemies for Ayato to be on par even with his AoE. Which means that the AoE point is mute. It's moot. There's no point because it's also 5 to 6 enemies. Your Ayato slash is not gonna hit 5 to 6 enemies at the same time. Based on the amount of mobs that we have right now in the game. It's not gonna be more than that. So you can say, oh, then in that case Ayato is on par with Yelan. Sure, but Yelan still has the overwhelming advantage against single target, right? Yep. I'm not bashing or trashing on Ayato, by the way. I'm trying to give you guys a very objective comparison when we consider that these two are back-to-back 5 stars. And she's a freak. She spends most of her time off field for crying out loud, Yelan. And oh, by the way, my C2 still has not included A4 passive for when she's on field. C4 effect lasts 25 seconds, so it will carry forward for the initial damage before Yelan E from second rotation onwards as well. So the damage is actually a little higher than this. And not to mention, she gives damage buff to the other DPS as well. And lastly, the new point here in this VapeEC HyperCarry comp, I did not include EM as the 4th base type for C1+, which will actually boost her damage further pretty significantly, especially the first 100 EM. Imagine if that's included. It's gonna be even higher. Now, speaking of EM, let's look at her figures with C2 Kazuha providing 200 EM. For the Giga chats who put for Kazuha up to C2, I applaud you, man. Okay? Especially since so little people put for Kazuha, right? Yep. Look at this figure here. It's almost 2 million. SC6R5. I don't know why it's this. It's absolutely crazy. Okay? With C2 Kazuha's 200 EM boost, her damage at C6 now is 1.71 to 1.98 million. Seriously, what a freaking freak, man. Even at C0, it's 550k, 55k to 642k. That's very impressive, right? C0 dishing out 555k to 642k in one rotation. Now imagine if you get approximately 100 EM from base rolls across your 5 artifacts from C1+ onwards. Imagine adding on another 100 EM onto the 200 EM. It's going to increase further. Comparing her DPS figures, i.e. again, like I said, the rotation extension has been factored in, versus C6 Ayato, right? C6, meaning C6 Yelan versus C6 Ayato. Yelan is doing 91% more at R1 and 80% at R5. with 2 HOD, 2 TLDR. So it may take you even more than 5 to 6, to 6 to 7, or maybe even more than that for Ayato to be on par even with his AoE. Because remember, Yelan has a distribution between single and AoE for her damage. Okay, single is about 60% at C0. When you go to C6, it's even lower than 60%. The single target versus a AoE contribution within her entire damage kit. So yeah, this is pretty good stuff. Although to be fair, Ayato does have slightly wider, well, no, Ayato has a wider AoE than Yelan's AoE attacks for sure. But that's why we have Kazuha, right? And here's the next good thing. Unlike in Ayato Overview HyperCarry where Raiden only gets Bennett's Q on her first Q hit, she now gets the full duration, plus the last 7 seconds of Yelan A4 passive on her damage, which means that when your Raiden is casting her Q, the first big hit, right, you're gonna get like almost 30% damage bonus from Yelan's A4 passive. That's a lot. And as she does her entire burst duration at the very last one, you know, the Raiden full duration 7 seconds of Raiden's Q, you do one M4C followed by another M4C followed by one last M1C, and her C, which is the charge attack, does a lot of damage, is going to get the full 50% bonus on that last charge attack. It's gonna be beautiful to look at that damage. So yeah, Raiden is going to do a lot more damage in Ayato over VapeEC HyperCarry, and Yelan is also going to do more damage as well. If you add Yelan's damage plus Raiden damage, it should be clear that the overall team DPS is much higher than a typical Raiden Electro HyperCarry, where Sarah basically replaces your Yelan to buff Raiden's damage. I mean, come on. 1.97, 1.98 million, 80k per second DPS. You seriously think Sarah is still better? Impossible. Even based on the Taser comp figures, it's already impossible. Let's say the, not to mention this VapeEC HyperCarry figures. Of course, this is still very dependent on the fact that whatever I say about the forward vapes do work. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do a bit of wheel talk here, so you can skip to the blue section here if you want to. But basically, I do believe that VapeEC HyperCarry may be even higher overall DPS than a fully stacked C6R5 Hu Tao VV Vape comp, because Hu Tao will need to do 800 plus K more than Raiden in order for her to do more than VapeEC. Because 800 plus K is the difference between a C6 Yelan in Hu Tao VV Vape and VapeEC. That's the amount of damage difference between these two comps for C6 Yelan. 800 plus K. Hu Tao needs to do 800 plus K more than Raiden. It's quite a tall order, honestly speaking. Now, for reference, I expect my C6R5 Hu Tao to do about 180 to 200k per CA as the A4 passive bonus grows, because right now she's already doing like 175k against Raiden boss now. And if I assume 10 M1CDs on Hu Tao, which is pretty, how should I say, it's pretty tough to make sure that it consistently hit 10. More often than not, hitting 9 is the average or the norm. So even with 10, right, C6R5 Raiden dishing out 800k to 1 million is sufficient for VapeEC to do better than C6R5 Hu Tao with C6 Yelan. So okay, everyone C6 basically. That's why I say it's a wheel talk. But I hope you can see, right? I'm actually pretty confident that Raiden can do this. Okay? Especially considering all the buffs that she's getting. She's getting the Electro Kazuha, all of Kazuha's buffs. She's getting the... Oh wait, she might lose out a little bit on the FS though. Yeah, she might lose out a little bit on the FS buffs. Yes, that's right. Okay, but she still gets the full banner buff. So that's very, very nice. So, not gonna lie, I'm very excited to try out both of these comps, both the VV Vape as well as this VapeEC HyperCarry. These are really the two comps that I'm most interested in now for Yelan. Okay, now end of view talk. let's talk F2P. So for F2P though, 160 plus K difference is the 160 plus K is the difference between C0 Yelan in Hutao VVV and VapeEC. So if your C0 Hutao can deal 160 plus K or more than your Raiden, whatever the C is, or whatever your C constellation on your Hutao is, as long as your Hutao can deal 160 plus K more than your Raiden when you have a C0 Yelan, then Hutao VVV is better for you. And of course, this is all assuming that you do have the 8 characters I've covered in the 2 math guides thus far. Okay? Let's look at artifact comparison next. Because I understand, okay, let me just expand a little on this, right? I do understand that F2P, the resources are limited. So your Hutao, between your Hutao and Raiden, it really depends on who is also more well built, right? If your Hutao is more well built than your Raiden, then you know, just use her in, just use C0 Yelan in Hutao VVV. If your Raiden is a lot more built and somehow you luck out and you got C2 Raiden, and we all know how good C2 Raiden damage is, then you know, VapeEC will likely be better for you. So it really depends on how your resources and how your artifacts and how your characters are looking like for your specific account. What I can do is just to present you a comparison when they are both equal. Alright? Alright, let's talk about artifact comparison. I'll try to complete the rest of it as fast as I can. So artifact comparison, very straightforward stuff. This is the percentage difference. Only two red figures here. 4 emblem is only the winner at C0 where we have to get more than 100 ER, and honestly it's only barely better. It's about 1% better than a 2 HOD 2 TOTM. For all other scenarios, 2 HOD 2 TOTM is the clear winner, and given the small advantage that 4 emblem has, I also recommend just go for 2 HOD 2 TOTM, especially if you're going C1 plus or Yelan. And if you have C2 Kazuha, by the way, I'm not showing here, but if you have C2 Kazuha, 2 HOD 2 TOTM actually performs better than 4 emblem even at C0R1. So TLDR, go for 2 HOD 2 TOTM. If you really want to go for 4 emblem at C0, you can, but it's a bit counterintuitive because you are actively looking to avoid ER substats on your emblem artifacts. Yeah. And honestly, farming tenacity is not too bad, right? Because Shinobu can make good use of it, and HOD has, well, Blizzard Strayer. Because you are farming 2 HOD 2 TOTM. Sorry. Both of these domains are actually pretty good to farm for at this moment. Because 4-piece tenacity works great for Shinobu, works great for Kokomi, and even for a support Fisher as well. Okay. Let's talk about her DPS. Let's compare Yelan DPS in VapeEC HyperCarry versus Taser. Okay, so this is the VapeEC Rotation DPS. This is the Taser Rotation DPS. Right off the bat, you already can see that the figure is lower. The Taser is lower figure. So this is how the percentage looks like. There are no scenarios where Taser is better, because there's no red figures here. So even after sacrificing Raiden E buff on some of the Q procs, not hitting a Q, and also not hitting on one of the CA from C1 plus rotation onward, Yelan's damage in VapeEC is still higher than in Taser. At C0, C4, C5 is 11 to 13%, while the other constellations are 5 to 7%. So overall, it's 5 to 13%. And more importantly, it's also the fact that Raiden does a lot more in VapeEC compared to Taser. Next, let's look at with C2 Kazuha effect for VapeEC. So the DPS figure is much higher now, yeah? I mean, even if I look at C0, compare 33k, okay, C0R1, 29k and 33k, yeah? This is the percentage difference. So with C2 Kazuha's 200 EM buff, Yelan's DPS is now 16 to 26% better than in Taser versus 5 to 13% earlier. Nice, very nice. Alright, so I've talked like a machine gun at a machine gun pace for almost 40 minutes now. And I thank you guys for your patience if you have been watching the whole video today to now. Let's talk about the TLDR now. This is the comp. VapeEC Kazuha, Bennett, Yelan, Raiden. For HyperCarry to work, there are no real flat slots here other than maybe Sucrose for Kazuha. But even then, when you use Sucrose to replace Kazuha, you are losing a lot of buffs. So I don't know whether you can still call it a HyperCarry comp. Okay, that's one. These are the rotations. If you need to, do pause and look at them in detail. D stands for dash or dodge. For details on the rotation, please watch the specific sessions on why I actually include a dodge here or a dash here in the rotation. And that's the reason why, because why? You don't want to hit with Q. But do look at the details if you need. Do look at the specific sessions if you need more details. Next is ER requirements. You need about 140 to 150 ER for C0 Yelan without Sacrificial. 100 ER required for C1 plus Yelan. Again, check the specific section for details. C0 Yelan with Aqua Bow is now 30% better than C0 Yelan with Sacrificial Bow when you're using 2 HOD, 2 TOTM, and it's 39 to 40% better with 4 Emblem. Okay, getting there. So C0 Yelan R1 Aqua is now 21% better than C0 Ayato R1 Haran, while C6 Yelan, C6 R1, Yelan versus Ayato C6 R1, Yelan is 75% better. And we are talking about comparing against VapeEC HyperCarry. Her whopping 1.18 million damage has also not included a lot of small factors that will increase her damage by a little. Example, okay, actually 100 EM is not a little, it will increase quite a significant amount, I would think. But for the A4 effect on her C2, etc., those will increase it by a little. So just bear in mind that I am not being super copium or super unfair to Yelan by maximizing her damage calculations where possible. I'm not even doing that right now. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys, man. I'm not even doing that right now and it's still so high. With C2 Kazuha, this difference increases to 36% for C0R1 and 91% for C6R1. She dishes out 1.98 million at C6, also known as what the freaking frick. SUB-DPS, by the way. Bennett does not buff Yelan damage directly, but he enables the forward Vapes together with Kazuha, so that's very nice. Please refer to the specific section for the details on why her damage is so high in VapeEC HyperCarry, and let me say this disclaimer again. Although I have taken all the elemental unit application, as well as the gauge unit theory, the unit application, the consumption, etc. into account when planning the rotation, we still need to test it to be sure when Yelan is out. So please wait for my testing before you pull, if you can wait. Alright, now the disclaimer over, let's go back and talk again about this again. 2 HOD, 2 TLTM is recommended for VapeEC HyperCarry. Please refer to the artifact comparison for the details. You can go for Emblem if you really want to, but like I said, it's counterintuitive because you're looking to avoid ER on your Emblem artifacts, which is very weird. Farming Tenacity and HOD is not too bad because you can pre-farm for your Shinobu as well, if you're going to get her. And HOD as well, Blizzard Strayer. HOD domain is always a good domain to farm. Simple as that. Yelan does 5 to 13% better at C0 in VapeEC HyperCarry. Oh wait, sorry, this is not C0. I should not include C0. This is 5 to 13% better across C0 to C6 compared to VapeEC. With C2 Kazuha, it's 16 to 26% better. So yeah, C2 Kazuha does give you quite a significant boost in the difference. VapeEC HyperCarry has the potential to do even more overall team DPS than Hu Tao VapeEC. Let that sink in for a moment. This comp that I've been talking about in this for the past 40 plus minutes, it actually has the potential to do even more team DPS than Hu Tao VapeEC. And that's considering the fact that your Yelan has C6, which means that you have C4, giving your Hu Tao additional 40% HP as well. Wow, right? At C0, the difference in Yelan's damage in both comps above is 160 plus K. So Hu Tao needs to deal 160 plus K damage more than Raiden, if both of them are at 0, as well as Yelan at C0 with all the buff mentioned in math guides. Obviously, for F2P players, I understand that resources are limited. I have played a F2P account previously as well, all the way to AR56. Although I haven't been playing it for months, because I had to spend time doing math guides. But I definitely understand the whole concept of like, is really dependent on whether your Hu Tao is fully built or your Raiden is fully built, or maybe you even went and invest and got your C2 Raiden. If you got a C2 Raiden, then just use VapeEC HyperCarry, okay? If not, then you know it really depends on whether your Hu Tao can do a lot more, this amount of damage more than Raiden. At C6, the difference is 800 plus K. So I'm actually fairly confident that a C6R5 Raiden will not deal 800 plus K less than a C6R5 Hu Tao, with all the aforementioned buffs. But remains to be seen, needs to be tested, but I'm fairly confident that she should not deal less than, because we're talking about a huge number, 800 plus K. So yeah, I'm fairly confident that VapeEC HyperCarry is going to be very good. And personally, I'm very keen to try out both of these two comps. They're gonna be super. They're gonna dish a lot of damage, man. This is gonna be two very high damage comps. Very nice. Okay, with that, that brings me to the end of this video. Almost at the end, we are gonna talk about what's coming next. So I've completed artifact comparison. We've completed the 14 comps that I wanted to do: BV Vape, Taser, Geo Vape, and VapeEC HyperCarry. So what's coming next is either Favonius Bow. Oh, sorry, it's not here. But anyway, this is an example. It doesn't mean that I will only talk about these 3 bows. So probably Favonius build first, or full HP versus crit build first. Let me know in comments which guys you guys may prefer. And yeah, join me over at Twitch as well, because at Twitch I answer almost every question there. And this is a Twitch link, and the link is in the description as well. Whew. Now, if you like the content, remember to like video and click subscribe for more. Thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate the patience that you guys put into watching my long videos. But again, I really spend hours creating this, how should I put this? Creating this as accurate as possible math figures and analysis for you guys. Alright, thanks everyone. Bye.